Andy, oh God.
Oh,
No, nothing, darling.
Oh no, he's calling me darling now. Oh God.
the truth is out.
I tell you what, right? Let's just have a bit of gay abandon.
Oh. Well,
Let's have a bit of gay abandon from Margaret.
Well, I've been given a book by what's her name? Professor Alice Roberts.
She gave it to you?
Bristol.
She didn't personally know.
Oh.
But it's a very good book. And she talks about, is it the bubonic plague or the pneumonic plague? Which was the one that was
Bubonic?
No, it was the bubonic. It was the bubonic and the pneumonic.
Spread by fleas.
Yeah.
And the reason it was so dreadful was because the fleas were constipated.
Oh.
Well, that
according to, I can't remember the whole story.
Yeah.
But it was because the fleas were constipated because they'd got it from mice. And it made them constipated, and this is why it caused this dreadful plague.
Yeah.
Most of the fleas came from other people, not rats.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly. Don't listen to Alice Roberts.
I'll look into it more.
She's got red hair.
And she's got red hair. All women with red hair are freaks. What? Oh, I'm glad Michelle ain't here because she's.
Moms are wonderful.
Oh God, please help me. Right, okay, talking about sensible people, what about that bloke, Roger? No, David.
No news, sorry.
Oh, God, right, this is going to be hard work tonight. Right, Jessica, can you just save me a minute? Just like do something to just save the situation. She's not even there!
I am, sorry, my mouse.
Oh, Jessica, are you?
Went to Raglan Castle the other day.
Oh yeah, tell them all about Raglan Castle. This is better than anything I could say. Just go into it. Just talk about your expectations, where Raglan Castle is. Build up the scene. Go for it.
Well, we went to Raglan Castle. We took my sister. We were going to go to Kaya Went and took the wrong turning, and we saw this beautiful medieval castle. It was huge, so I decided to go. Paid the entrance fee of £20, which I thought, well, it better be good because of the price. You're being
paid too much.
Yeah, and it was daylight robbery, is all I'm saying. They had fake plastic bones in the cellar of a mouse and a human hand and a skull, and they put a sign next to it saying, "Danger, dinosaur bones." This is Cadden, by the way. Right. And then they've got these two grand fireplaces in the kitchen, beautiful. And I thought if I was to be in charge of this site, I would do one of the fireplaces up as if someone was cooking food for the banquet of all these people to come to this castle. And they didn't do that. They just put a fish on a plate with this contraption where a magnifying glass was reflecting light from a candle onto it. And I thought that would really not make any sense because how you couldn't cook one singular fish like that for hundreds of people. So I came to the conclusion that Cadden was ripped off a lot of people and they're not telling them anything about the castle, and they're getting more money than, where's the money going to if they're not putting the money into showing us what a castle would have possibly looked like, or even anything that was accurate at all. But there was no dinosaur bones, and that was what really annoyed me, because people are going to leave that castle with information that's inaccurate.
Yeah, so can I just make a simple comment on behalf of everybody, right? Are you sure you weren't smoking something at the time?
I'm sure I've got images to prove it. It sounds like I was smoking at the time. Yeah. I wish I was. It probably would have made it better.
Right. Okay. Right. Fine. Oh, God's sake.
Should get your money back.
Yeah, I just gotta go get a drink, right? Because I just don't understand what's going on now. This has got to be the most weirdest start I've ever had. Oh, by the way, anyone want a bottle of Worcester sauce?
No.
Yes, I do actually.
Oh, all right then.
It's
well,
on my shopping list.
Do you know what we had earlier on? Michelle said, I said, right, I've done this rice. I did it hours ago, right, to Michelle. She said, oh, we'll have sweet and sour with it. It was sweet and sour with bloody rice, but we had to. Michelle's always right.
Regular, basmati.
That's nice.
Yeah.
All right then. I'm gonna go get a drink, right?
In it. Lovely.
Shut up!
I just had sweet and sour from my local butcher.
Oh,
Sweet and sour chicken. It was absolutely gorgeous.
Yes, I like sweet and sour.
Yeah, I do.
chicken.
Yeah.
I don't like the chicken in batter that they do, though.
I don't like anything they do in batter.
No.
Only KFC, perhaps.
Is that the turkey or is that Carl?
That's Carl.
Carl's
That's
having
That's
a
Carl, not a turkey.
Either that or he's murdering the turkey.
boy. Yeah. Oh. Oh.
Are they wounded turkeys that he's looking after, or are they pets?
No, they're pets, I think.
Oh,
They've just bred them. Yeah.
Hopefully my hopefully this is just a dream and I can just lie down on the sofa, right? And this is just in my head, right? Oh,
Just life,
oh
mate.
God! Hopefully, if I put these on, right, nobody will be there.
Just life, mate.
well,
What?
it's just like every week, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh,
Just
Yeah.
normal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
who?
It's
Hey?
just normal.
I'd be
What's the-
normal.
Normal, right? Okay. Right. Let's get started. So yeah, we've got to record this as well. We've got to get the American bird on. Right, hang on. Let's get her on. Here we go.
Thank you, honey.
Hang on a minute. Stop a minute. Stop. Right. My OCD's gone up the wall now. She said now recording's in progress. No, she always say recording has started. What gave her the right to change that?
Because I think you're already
Because it came up
record.
earlier that somebody was
Yeah.
recording it.
Yeah.
Ah,
That's why I called you darling.
so it's on record.
Being mainstream, somebody said.
What?
Main Street. Down the tap.
What's he on about? Oh God! Right, let's just get these images up because we're never going to get going otherwise. Oh right, here we go. Oh, hang on, let's move that in there. Hang on, I've got to move something in there, right? That shouldn't be there. Oh God, I'm having one of those moments. I don't know what I'm doing. What's that do? No. Right, okay, yeah, we'll put that there, right, into pictures. Oh, it's turning all wrong. Replace. No, I don't want to replace it. Oh God. Hang on, I got to like something's doing my head in a minute. Hang on, if I do that there, or I do there's a thingy in the wrong place. I hate it when thingies are in the wrong place.
Can be painful.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
very
yeah.
careful.
Yeah, could be.
You know, end up
Oh God, please help.
So what are we doing tonight then, Carl?
I don't know anymore. I just
Carry on then.
studying
Yeah.
mammoths in the 21st century.
mammoths. Right. Okay. So I have got the slide in front of me. Right. Everything's fine. Right. Everything's nice and rosy. We've started. We started ages ago, actually. So I said that we were going to go to Yugoslavia tonight.
You did?
Fair enough.
Now let's sort of zoom in on that. We'll actually go to Serbia.
Mhm.
So does anyone know what major archaeological site we might be doing in Serbia tonight?
No.
No.
In fact, it's such a worldwide major archaeological site, a world famous site, that I've never heard of it before,
Oh,
which is typical, really.
In the tundra.
But no, not really. It's completely away from that, right? So now we're going to look at the first image. So let's look at the first image. So there we go. Oh, I haven't even shared it. Right, here we go.
Oh.
First image, share alike. Right, Serbia. Does this ring a bell? Anyone?
Like a big greenhouse.
Yes, a big greenhouse protecting a very important archaeological site.
what's that?
Okay.
Now, the drum I'm going to beat straight away
That thing.
is that Serbia is such a poor country. It's got the resources to put this wonderful museum over an archaeological site, protect it, give you all the information you need. It's displayed extremely well, and we've got to put up with the absolute rubbish that we've got in this country, right? So the site is known as Lepenski Vir, which is spelled Lepenski and the next word V-I-R, Lepenski Vir. Lepenski Vir. It's along the Danube River between Serbia and Romania. So Lepenski Vir, it's a site I've never heard of, but this site itself is as important as the archaeological excavations by Kathleen Kenyon at Jericho. It's as important in prehistoric circles as Cattle Hayek. It's Göbekli Tepe. It's up there, but I've never ever come across this site before ever. And I just thought, right, actually, I should do this more often. I should say, right, we're going to go to this country and then find somewhere, and that's how we're going to do it. So I've never visited an archaeological site in old Yugoslavia. I've never done a talk on a site in Yugoslavia. So this is an absolute first. But mind you, we've got about 250 countries on the planet, and I'm sure I can find 150 of them that I haven't even given a talk on anything in those sites anyway. But this Lepenski Vir, now this site itself protects the archaeological excavations alongside the River Danube of a site that might indicate to be the first town in Europe. And I know we looked at Jericho, and I know we were looking at Jericho and we said, the first town, the first urban area anywhere on the planet, but that's in, you could say, between the border between Europe and Asia. But as towns go, as something that's closer to us in Western Europe, there's something been here for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9,000 years or more. So this is a site that we're going to look at today. And if you're ever sailing down the Danube, this is the place you need to go to. And the millions and millions of pounds that they've just put into this centre goes to show the importance that Serbia places on its history. And again, I've never ever thought that money would be there for this type of project. So as you can see, it's a huge aircraft hangar-like building over an acre, which is covered like this. So I know how big an acre of land is. We've got 4 acres in West Wales. And it takes a good 3 minutes to walk from one side to the next, right? And this is vast, and it's alongside the River Danube. And they started excavating here because they were building a huge reservoir to sort of regulate some of the water in the valley known as the Iron Gates Gorge on the Danube. So they built this huge. They built a huge reservoir, but obviously a huge dam to keep that reservoir back. Now, Lepenski Vir archaeological site has been extensively excavated. We've got some really interesting bits of archaeological evidence. So 2 things we're going to focus on tonight. We're going to focus on the strange type of objects that they have actually found at the site. We're going to actually focus on the way they're presenting the archaeology. Now, I remember having a conversation with Jessica on the phone, and I said, look, what I wanted to do, I wanted to emulate this archaeology from the Croatian fascist regime with the Italian fascist regime archaeological excavations in Italy. I couldn't find anything, but this site came up in my notes, and I thought, nothing to do with fascism. It's nothing to do with that. It's about the culture and heritage of the country, right? So I decided to do this site, and I thought, wow, this is great. These stone carvings. I got to be honest with you, that looks like Pete.
Oh, thank you.
It does look like you. Honestly, it's bald. It's got that strange that you do and a strange nose, and it's got these big eyes that you've got. This looks like you, Pete. Well, if Sandra was here today, I'd pick on Sandra, so don't worry about it. It's just you, Pete. This is why you've got to get Sandra on board. So anyway, so let's do a little bit of information on this site and sort of to put it into perspective. So Lepenski Vir located in Serbia between the border of Romania and Serbia. We'll show you exactly where this is. It's a famous, so famous I've never heard of it, archaeological site, and it's associated with this sort of valley, a flooded valley alongside the River Danube. It's known as the Iron Gates culture of the Balkans. Right, that's two things. I'd never heard of that either. I'd obviously heard of the Danube. So it's very interesting that it's a Mesolithic, Neolithic culture. So the very latest archaeological dating evidence that we've actually got tells us that the archaeology at least dates back to 9,200 years ago. And actually it competes directly with Göbekli Tepe and Jericho in that some of the radiocarbon dates give a possible earlier date of around 11,500 years ago. If that's the case, we'll pull back from that though. But if that's the case, this is the oldest urban occupied centre anywhere on the planet. But I'm not going to compete with Catherine Kenyon's excavations because the earliest date is really fought over and argued over. So we'll say it's up there with Jericho. So there's some disagreement about when the settlement and culture of Lepenski Vir actually did arrive. So that's different. That you know, the settlement is different from when people arrive. So when people arrive, they dropped the odd work flint and they made a fire and they just went down the road. That's not really a culture or a settlement. So then what they need to do, they need to work out, really, does this really date back to 11,000 years ago, or are we tonight going to be happy with 9,200 years ago, which I am happy with tonight. So what we do find is that if we look onto another image, but before we look at another image, this is a piece of architecture, because this has actually been moved out the ground. This is actually associated with the ground plan of buildings. It was actually down there amongst people, in with the architecture of the buildings. The pseudo-stone foundations of these buildings, which we're going to actually have a look at. So these are all architectural features as much as they are portable objects. So there we are, shown within Serbia. So you've got the Danube along this frontier, and there's the Danube going out there. There she is, trickling out to create the borders between these land masses, between these big countries. So there it is. It's sort of more or less over towards Romania. I could have easily said we're going to look at something from Romania tonight, but you know, we're definitely well in Serbia. And look at this. Doesn't this look rather cute? Actually, this looks a bit like Roger without glasses. Yeah, if I'm going to insult people tonight, I may as well insult all of you. You're next, Andy. Actually, to be honest with you, he looks a bit like Andy, to be honest with you, with the round glasses. But so these actually little portable objects are again part of the architecture of these sites. I'm just going to see if the next one's actually an image of the site. So there it is. So what they've done, what they've done is that when we actually get close into these little things sticking out here are actually these objects that you've actually been seeing. If we go back, this is what these things are. They're sort of used as architectural features. So again, going back to my notes. So if we again think about this, the archaeology is really dating this stuff to very, very early. Now, if you want to put this into a sense of perspective, the perspective is that in Britain, for example, we didn't start having proper settlements because if this site does date back to 9,000 years ago, we've got little houses here and there in Britain, such as Hoyk in Northumberland, and we've got close to settlements places such as Starcar in Yorkshire, but this is a permanent settlement. People lived here all year round. Starcar is a temporary settlement. We do believe it's a settlement that was used for certain times of the year. So Lepenski Vir site consists of one large settlement with around 10 satellite villages spreading out from it. So basically you've got one central zone and you've got all these other villages leading out from it in different areas. Numerous pristine structures and peculiar architectural remains have been found at this one site, the big site. Now we're going to mention the archaeologist names that have excavated this site because they're great. Like the archaeologist Dragoslav Shregovich, can't make it up, Dragoslav Shregovich, who first explored the site in the 1960s, said that such large structures so early in human history and the original architectural solutions define Lepenski Vir as a specific and very early phase in the development of European prehistoric culture. So if you want to start sort of throwing your marbles out the cot, this is the place to actually study to understand early civilization in Europe and why it develops. There's a very important point. If I do get to it tonight, there's a very, very important point telling me why this site worked. And when we come to it, you will understand. The reason why this site worked and the culture worked for quite some time is because people cooperated. People didn't go around killing each other. I can't spell it out anymore. The site was notable for its outstanding level of preservation and the overall exceptional quality of its artifacts, particularly the stone artifacts, one of the stone artifacts in front of us. Because the settlement was permanent and planned, that right, two key words there, permanent and planned, with an organized sense of society, a social life, this could be described as the first city in Europe. Again, one of the first cities in Europe, if not the first city in Europe, if you want to have a fight with Jericho. See, if Israel could turn up in a European song contest, then Jericho's part of Europe. Anyway, so this is why I'm struggling with that one. So the location and geography, let's just have a look at that image. So there we go, Lepenski Vir. And there she is. Actually, that's an old sign that you've just seen there, because since that sign, they've invested millions of pounds into the site. Absolutely amazing. Now, I'm struggling when I'm looking at reconstructions, and the scale of this site is quite sizable. So to give you an idea of the scale of those buildings, if I actually draw a little bit of a stick figure in there, you can sort of get an idea. So I sort of draw a little bit of a stick figure. Okay, there you go. Do little arms. There you go, and there you go. And he's got a little head. That gives you an idea of scale. This is how big these buildings are. So if you look, for example, at the one there, you could probably get a family of 6 or 7 people in one of these buildings and have enough room for the animals. Now, if we scrub that away, right? Now the way they've actually reconstructed these is odd, and I'm actually struggling because you've got that there, and the entranceway is actually. Hang on a minute, I've got the wrong arrow there. Where are we? Right, the entranceway is here. This is the entranceway. It's open in the front. However, other examples show that there's curbstones in the front as well. So when we look at the reconstructions, it's very difficult to work out what's going on. But you can clearly see that there's a society going on. It's terraced down to the Danube River. Now, again, because of the construction of the dam and the flooding of the landscape, it was decided that this site be excavated, and it was then preserved, like what happened with the Aswan Dam and the movement of Abu Simbel, and you've got the Queen's Temple and everything flooded there. this was that type of situation, but luckily this was above water level and they were able to excavate it. Now, moving away from this sort of reconstruction side of things, the site isn't actually buried under meters and meters of archaeology. As you can see, you can see archaeology there, and the archaeological layers are only about 2 meters in depth. And that's really interesting, being 2 meters in depth, no more than 2 meters, because this is 9,000 years of archaeology. So what's basically happened is, because the River Danube is over hither, what's happened is this has been an erosion shelf. So basically, there hasn't been a massive buildup of soil here, no more than 2 meters, more like about 1.5 meters at most. So again, we're looking at something very, very important, something very, very special, and I would say very, very new. I'm talking for myself. If anyone wants to butt in and say, I knew about this site, I've known that this is there, then go for it. If you have, then you're very lucky, because I've never heard of it myself. So with all that being said, again, the first city in Europe, as described by Ristove Pavlovic. He's a historian. Lepenski Vir is located on the Danube in eastern Serbia, within the Iron Gates Gorge. It is situated near the village of Boljetin. The view, what we do see, if we actually have a little look at, move away from this a moment. We just go through all the images to actually show you what I want to show you. Oh my God! Oh, right, there we go. So what we do see is that there's our site, Lepenski Vir, and if we go with so we're looking here, near Moldekovec, and it's a gorge here, which is known as the Iron Gate Gorge. And if you see there, Iron Gate, those are the areas where it's been sluiced or dammed. So this whole landscape itself is a rich landscape. These people could easily exchange. They would have had rich soils. Remember, this is a time only 3,000 years after the melting of ice. So this is what would have formed these gorges and these valleys. And you can get a good idea. You're looking at the territory between Romania and Serbia. And to be honest with you, you're looking at this and there's rivers everywhere. And this landscape is a landscape which is probably full of more secrets than meets the eye. That's why we're doing this today. So as I get my notes out, we'll keep with this little planning in front of us. So the view above and across the Danube is wide open, and the stable and enduring terrain on the riverbank resists the intensely erosive effects of the Danube. And what we do find is that the reason what's happening with some sites, even though you've got the sort of corrosive and erosive nature of the Danube, these types of sites are protected by huge boulders, natural glacial boulders that were left down by the last glaciation. So instead of the Danube eroding this long since, the boulders have actually retained the riverbanks in some areas, and this being one of those sites where the terrain offers a settlement of great development and information that we're looking at today. So the long habitation of the site was also enabled by the proximity of the great river, as I've already mentioned, the natural richness of the river itself and the hinterland and the extensive landscape, and the sense of shelter from the elements as well, the thermic benefits, the shelter, and also the ability to use the great wealth of previous melting ice to build up the landscape, which was great for agriculture. The long-term habitation was facilitated by the. Now this is interesting. I read this and I thought this is really odd that a writer has actually written this. The reason why you've got a site that is which was a habitational site for such a long time is because the archaeologists are citing that these people had a form of birth control. So this meant that their society didn't grow and outstrip the resources. So whenever we do lectures like this, we always say that humanity extends its remit, i.e. too many people are born. But what happens is people are living within this landscape because they are controlling birth. They've got it's almost as if the levels of population remain consistent over a long period of time. So when they get to X amount of people, they're not extending their population. They're controlling their population, which is something that you don't often come across by even archaeologists saying it. It's dangerous to talk about the solution to human problems is actually birth control. That's a dangerous thing to talk about. After all, the problem to the planet would be to control humanity and its ability to procreate. Archaeologists are saying this back then, 9,000 years ago. It's almost as if they were able to control a population, therefore the resources weren't outstripped. And that meant that the settlement could continue to develop, but without outstripping the resources surrounding. Even though it's alongside the River Danube, it could quite easily have outstripped its resources. Any human population can outstrip its resources. It keeps growing and growing until it can't grow anymore. So there's lots of this settlement and lots of other settlements associated with this culture that remains unexcavated. So what we do find as well is that the landscape, not only do we actually find the trading propositions of the Danube to be of great benefit to this Iron Gates culture, but what is also beneficial is that nearby those big protruding rocks that I'm telling you that retain the bank of these types of landscapes that have very much been preserved, is that there's it's describing lots of swirling waters and whirlpools, creating oxygenated water, creating rich algae that the fish feed on, creating the scene and the landscape to have the abundancy of fish. So, and again, obviously, when you've got great rivers like the Danube, the fish can pass you by. But if you've got these little inlets that the fish come in to feed on the algae, then it means that they've got the ability to harvest quite easily. So what we do see is that we do find that this landscape has not only seen the sense of this civilization. What we also see is that the Romans also developed this landscape as well. It's lucky that this site survived the Roman ingress onto the landscape. And what we do have is we will come up and we will see a plaque associated with Emperor Tiberius that's been flooded within this landscape. But we've got lots of other evidence associated with this site. So what we do find, we've got evidence of the discovery of the site, the excavation of the site, which we'll actually look at that moment. I'm going to take a drink. Right, so if we go back on our images, go back a little bit. And again, looking at all these little snippets as we go by, again, what we do see is what they've done is they've excavated the site. They've put some kind of membrane down around the stones. And what they've then done, they've consolidated the surfaces of these sites. These objects there you go, these carved stones are still in situ alongside these hearths. And some of them show that they're open on the front totally, others show that they're not open completely on the front. So the entranceway, the threshold, is in fact here. So you can either go left or you can go right. Now you're talking about what my degree was on, access analysis within archaeology. So you go left or you go right. Directly in front of you is the fire. So, you know, this is a really important sense of interaction with this site. But whether we talk more about that or not, it depends on time tonight. So again, we've got this curved around. What we're talking about is that if we build a little bit of a shelter, we're talking about a little bit of a shelter coming in from the back there, and we've got all these beams supported. Okay, we come in there, and you must have, there's obviously a frontage, and there would be uprights which would support the frontage, not by there, but like that. So obviously you do have the entranceway. It looks like a pretty wide entranceway, but we'll have a look at the reconstructions to see where we're at. So some of them are like this, others show a different sense of a reconstruction. But those are those two little carved, there are loads of them on site, and there are loads of them in the museum. And lots of these date back to 7, 8, nearly 9,000 years ago. Again, in very early carvings, intense carving, giving you a sense of their intense relationship, not only with how they portray themselves, but their intense relationship with the great extensive landscape around them. Now, this is what I'm talking about. They look like teepees, but triangular teepees. I would probably dismiss the fact that they've got chimneys on them, because, you know, if you've got chimneys on them, the heat just goes out and you lose it. In relation to roundhouses, as you know, you don't have a chimney because the smoke layer remains consistent in the building. You can go below the smoke layer and you've got a nice warm building. Again, just give you an idea of the Lepenski Vir. And there you go. They've opened this museum, and they had virtual reality experiences at this site as early as 2016. So you guys could go on a virtual reality look at the site. So you can see this here. This is another way of reconstructing. This is slightly different from these reconstructions where the smoke exits directly at the apex, and the smoke may actually exit below the apex. And we're only hoping that the reconstructions are like this. It's quite an inappropriate entranceway, very close to the fire. It may have actually been lower than that. But again, this is all about expression and possibly the emboldened embodiment of what the archaeologists feel that the site looked like. Again, look at these wonderful sandstone carvings, waves. I remember a description of these being a description that they portray waves, but they also portray people's heads and people's faces and people's features, which is very, very important. Right, so the discovery of the site. So the site was discovered on the 30th of August, 1960. So let's just do a date count on that. 61 years ago, this site was discovered, and it was discovered by accident. A local farmer, Manojlo Milosevic, not related to President Milosevic, but Manojlo Milosevic. It was discovered back then, and there was plans afoot of building a hydroelectric power station at Iron Gate number 1. So the hydroelectric power station, Iron Gate number 1. So those plans. And what the archaeologists felt, they felt they're going to lose the archaeology unless they looked into it now. So there was 3 years of inactivity, and the archaeologists got a team together from Belgrade Institute for Archaeology. And obviously this is the time of Tito. So Tito would have been quite pleased with having money being funded into this level of archaeology, which makes sense. So construction of the hydroelectric power station is always a reason for archaeologists to get off their backsides to go out and study an archaeological site, because if they don't, the archaeology is going to be gone for, well, not forever. It's still going to be there, but it's going to be gone for a very, very long time. So it's the opportunity. Maybe somebody might be lucky enough to blow up the Aswan Dam so that people of Sudan can get their water back. But that's not going to happen anytime soon. But when that does happen, and it will, people can study the archaeological sites that the Aswan Dam water had once flooded. But I can't see this happening with the hydroelectric power station anytime soon. So the archaeologists needed to get out there, and he needed to study this landscape before this great artificial lake is constructed. But this site was never flooded, but they thought it would have been. So they got in there and he started excavating it. So the head of the project at the time, Dusanka Vikovic Todorovic, lovely names. Can you imagine? I used to watch Wales playing the Yugoslavian football team, and it used to be Vukovic Todogovic is now tackling Ryan Giggs, and by the time he'd said it, something else had already happened. Great. So I love this, is why I love those names. Anyway, so basically they got the team together, the Belgrade Institute for Archaeology. The area itself, again, found by accident by the local farmer, and they really started to get into it. And it was going to be an excavation that would seem to be groundbreaking. Now, remember at the time, when you think about it, actually, if you want to sort of think about it, this is only a few years after Kathleen Kenyon's excavations were concluded at Jericho. So we're talking about, and this is a few years. This is a few years now before we're talking about Göbekli Tepe. But obviously, Chateau Hayek would have actually been known about. So all these different sites that I mentioned, these early archaeological sites, these early urban centres, are starting to become of interest. So obviously what they started to find out at this site were early forms of ceramics, but not obviously as early as the archaeology that we're actually talking about. So the excavations, full-scale excavations, then started taking place by the 6th of August, 1965. And they started excavating, and they started probing the rest of the landscape, and they started to think about protecting the archaeology straight away. They thought what we need to do, we need to really sort of think about protecting the archaeology. And even what they started to find was cultural archaeological layers starts below the surface layer of humus. So in other words, the archaeology itself was hidden by half a meter of humus. They're basically a layer of broken down mud, grass, and geological stuff and all the rest of it. So that's spread across the landscape. So you've got half a meter of that, which is in thickness, and then you've got the archaeology going down to these very early layers. And then the importance of the site was actually suddenly realized this is Mesolithic. This is really, really early. This is really, really early stuff. This is massively important. The excavations ended in 1971 when the whole site was when the whole site itself and the archaeology had to be moved. So here we go. The excavations ended in 1971 when the whole site was relocated. So as I was saying earlier on, you've got, I was trying to get at that you've got the archaeology that remained intact, but they had to move it. So they had to move this 30 meters away, a bit higher, to avoid flooding from the newly formed lake, which was being created. So they moved everything there, soil and all, turfs and all, they moved it all there. So they've got the real archaeology there, so they can actually display it. The ground surface and everything were moved, everything, right? So exploring up to a depth, they actually managed to find in total across this large landscape 138 buildings, which comprised of one main settlement, 10 other little settlements. They found altars, they found these wonderful things, they found the burial ground. We've got one illustration of a body as well tonight, which was also discovered in 1968. So, but with lots more bodies than that were actually found. But one of the bodies I'm going to show you is buried in a very strange way. In fact, the way this body is buried, which we're not going to see yet, is unique from what I can find in all the illustrations how people have been buried. So again, all the archaeology there, turfs and all, they moved up there with everything sort of to a safer locality. And you've got the fireplace and everything there, and you can look down on it. So the archaeology is sort of 30 meters away and a bit further down from there. And you've got this wonderful hangar looking out on the River Danube, absolutely wonderful, pristine, everything there. Obviously the heads as they were moved, put back into position, great sense of archaeology. And these little things. This one looks a bit like Margaret.
Thank you.
Well, if you drew hair on it, it would look like you, Margaret.
Cheers.
What's wrong with that? At least you've got a bit of a smile.
It's cute.
Yeah, well, there you go then. It's cute. Don't argue. Don't argue with me. So this is the thing. You've got all these, you've got these portrayals of, you've got these carvings on the rocks like this one. And then you've got, and sometimes when you turn these around, you've actually got heads on them as well. But if you actually look at this as well, you've got these little miniature heads that were associated with the homes. They were with people. These could actually represent members of the family. They could represent loved ones, and they're really well formed for the dates that we're talking about. What they did do, this was the museum. This was the museum as it used to look like. This would be the type of museum that you'd find in Britain, to be honest with you. But then when they had all the funding, what we do find is, look at that. Massive improvement from that. And all these little weird little objects. We don't have many little weird objects to show you tonight, because as I said, I want to focus on the sort of sense of the archaeology and the way it's presented and so on, and obviously these little heads. And again, little carved out of bone there. I don't think we know what this is, but again, a piece of the delicate archaeology that you can actually find on this site. And there you go. You've got more of a viewing platform associated with the site. This is where you go in, and over there, that's where you get the archaeology that you can all actually see. So beyond there, you've got the rest of the museum, and you've obviously got the cabinets, and again, very roomy. This is how I feel museums should be, so that people can sit there and take the archaeology in. Then again, you could look out the River Danube, have to look at the archaeology and all that type of thing. But if we sort of move on again, as we're looking at within this landscape, very much associated with the River Danube, and again thinking that the River Danube should have long since destroyed this site, and it didn't. So what we do find is that the site itself, the earlier site of Lepenski Vir, dating back at least maybe to, as I've said, 9,000 odd years ago. This site may have been occupied for not 100 years, not 1,000 years, 2,000 years the site is occupied for, which is quite a long time. So why am I stressing the importance of that? I'm thinking, well, actually there's loads of points, but there's 2 points. One point, people managed to live there at that locality for such a long time, right, without extending their remit of humanity. They didn't exhaust resources. That's one important point. You can argue that, you know, the archaeologists are talking nonsense about human population being kept in check. But I would like to think that was a really interesting argument. And then again, 2,000 years ago, the Romans hadn't come to Britain. That's in our timeline. 2,000 years ago, we were still an Iron Age society, and Rome was a couple of decades away from actually changing things for good over here. So it's 2,000 years ago, the great cathedrals of Britain weren't built. So that time span, looking around 9,000 years ago, people were continuous span settlement for 2,000 years. That's really important. I think I've just probably realised something when I look at the site of Jericho, and I said Jericho's been continuously occupied for 11,000 years. And we've said that this site might actually date back to 11,000 years, right? But we're not sure of that. We went for 9,000 years. Jericho has been more or less continually occupied, as we mentioned. So this site has had spans of occupation, but not continuous. I think that's the point which I should actually make. Now, what we find stone artifacts and tools and bones, and we get that this isn't the only site within the landscape. There are more sites like this, more sites to be found, more sites to be excavated. Now, I think when I looked at this, if I can make sure that there we go. I've got a lot to read through now, and it's important that I get through this because there's an important sentence that I'm going to use, right? And it puts everything into perspective. But before we get there, it is assumed that the people of Lepenski Vir, the Lepenski Vir culture within the Iron Gates landscape, represent the descendants of the early European population. Archaeological evidence of human habitations could be said to be found within this landscape, dating back to at least 20,000 years, but we're talking about this settlement now. We're talking about a period when the climate was a lot warmer and the climate was a lot more suitable for the people. Many archaeologists have actually studied this landscape, and they come up with this conclusion. Now, this is the big thing. So if we do see this as 9,500 years ago, or whenever we do see it, the original population remained within the landscape, and a new population began to settle on the banks of the Danube River. Evidence shows that these newcomers, these Neolithic newcomers, didn't wipe out the indigenous population. They quickly mixed with them. There was no sense of you're here, we're going to chuck you off the landscape. The DNA and all the other evidence tells us, the archaeology, no sign of any destruction, nothing like that, right? So the new people settling from outside intermingled and mixed with indigenous population more or less straight away, which is very different than anywhere else in archaeology. Because usually in archaeology, we come up with these fictitious Celts coming over from Europe, and we say that the local people was completely wiped out, and no local people were left within the landscape. That's not an argument I go with. Any people coming over from Europe would have just intermingled, and this is exactly what's happened at this site, Lepenski Vir. There was no genocide. There's no evidence of genocide. And the point is, whatever was happening was that the people were able to, okay, welcome within our community. I think that's amazing. And lots of archaeologists sign up to this. Where did these people come from? They may have come from Asia Minor. They may have come from exactly the same place that Kathleen Kenyon excavated. Jericho. These people brought with them new ways of doing things. So I think a good demonstration of that is the Windrush generation. In the late 1940s, 50s, and 60s, we really needed people from the Caribbean, and they did bring with them ways of cooking, their food, their work ethic, their music. They intermingled with us in many places very well. They weren't killed. They weren't wiped out. And that's sort of a little bit of a demonstration of that. It's not the same, but you could say that we didn't kill the people of the Caribbean. We sort of needed them, you know, in the 1950s and 60s. So they become part of us. So this is what we're seeing there. If it could happen in the 50s and 60s, where we can welcome people with open arms from the Caribbean, and so rightly so, this was happening in the past as well. So it's not an unusual event. It's not a let's go out killing people event. Look, in many places and times in history that we see. With them, they brought the first crane that they could see as being industrial to plant. Hence this sense of Neolithic change. And a different knowledge in agriculture. For example, you know, we've got the land in West Wales, and Michelle's just bought a load of scythes, and she's just learning how to use a scythe. You can probably get through an acre of our grasses there in about 3 or 4 hours. But Michelle's never done scything before, and she's given it a good old go. It needs to have somebody to actually show us both how to use a scythe. So it's the new technology, it's a new way of doing things. That's the only major change. And you don't need to kill people to do that. You just sort of integrate. And a knowledge of agriculture and the husbandry of sheep, cattle, and goats is also coming in. So of new strains of cattle, goat, and sheep. It's a bit like when turkeys were brought over from the New World. They added something different. So this is exactly what's happening when you introduce new strains of sheep and goat. So based on their research, what they're finding is that what all this shows is that there's a blending of the populations occurred almost immediately. And I do like that. It's saying in my notes, this is unique, but maybe it's the way we interpret things. As in other parts of Europe, two such different communities would initially live set aside, and then they might wipe each other out, or they might sort of intermingle later on. I think what the archaeologists are saying here, somebody come in and said, right, yeah, welcome in. It's great. Let's do it. Let's just welcome in, like we did with the Windrush generation. Welcome, we're in, we need you. Well, we need to probably extend our knowledge mindset. I think that's really, really important. So in many ways, this is a melting pot, a keystone of human prehistory in Europe. And the keystone of human prehistory in Europe is that sense of interaction. Back to these Celts, because I know Pete will come back at me, so I've got to explain myself a bit better. You may have had small waves of people coming over from Europe who may have identified themselves as Celts. They didn't wipe out all the population of Britain. Like there's been many waves of people from the continent with their ideas, and we've taken stuff over to Europe. That's more of the look that we're looking at in regards to this landscape, the Lepenski Vir culture. So this is the foundation in a way of the concept of villages, open squares, and sort of plazas, the sense of families, which this is the sense of what's going on across continental Europe. So the modern Serbian today is a very much of a mixed match of population. But before we say that, actually, is this really, really new? And the reason why I'm asking that question is this really, really new? Is this a new concept? I'm starting to think if the archaeologists had actually looked a little bit further and started looking at what we're learning about the Neanderthals and Homo sapiens tens of thousands of years earlier, isn't what we're finding a completely different racial looking person integrates with another racially different looking individual, and actually two hominid types, and they're intermingling. And in fact, they may have been intermingling quite happily, because history and archaeology is now being analysed by people who are more open-minded. I would have said 10 years ago, there's more women in archaeology. They're given more of a nurture sense of set to archaeology. But we've gone on beyond that. I think there's lots of male archaeologists like me that now understand that you don't need to go out killing and putting swords through people to have an impact. That there's a sense of what we see in modern Serbia, for example, that the population is so diverse in Serbia. It's the only one of the only places in that part of the world where you can get a huge Muslim community there and a huge Christian community there and a Jewish community over there. And unfortunately, the war slightly changed that at times, and the Kosovan war. But the point I'm trying to make is that you do have that intermixing. And this is one thing that Tito looked at in Yugoslavia. He said, actually, this is what it was like in the past. Is that sense of mixing. So maybe this was great for those archaeologists to see this. So the modern Serbian population still incorporates at least 10% of these original genes from these original people. 10% of the Serbian population today can trace themselves back 9,500 years. 10% of the genome dates back to this period. 10%. There's been so many changes in Serbia, but it's still 10%. It's still the same with Britain as well. In many cases, we could say that people who trace themselves back to 10,000 years ago in Britain have 10% of those original genes from those people. And this is what we're saying here as well. So again, it's this landscape, you could say, with the archaeology, is a great observatory of the landscape. Again, as long as you've got that valley, as long as you've got some nice agriculture, and as long as you can do something about your population, then things will go well. Because you can imagine, this is the backdrop. You can't really farm here. So what you've got is that landscape along the Danube. As long as you don't overextend yourself, you can keep things going for a very, very long time. And it's just hit me, actually. If only humanity today can learn from these examples, then maybe all the present day problems on the planet can slowly go away. We've had waves of diseases over the past 40 to 50 years. We've always had diseases, but we've had some really bad ones over the past decade, and that's due to we've got large numbers of people. We always build cities in the wrong places, and we don't understand the landscape. We don't work with it, and all the rest of it. And all the models for understanding how we progress as humanity are within sites such as this. Sites, there's answers at Jericho, why people have been at Jericho for so many years. There's answers at our wonderful site that we're looking at Serbia today. There's examples at Göbekli Tepe. If only we can actually learn from these people, we might be able to change the outcome for the future. So looking into these faces, looking into the faces of the past, understanding the face of the past, and you can see the arms coming in there, like a little deity. Obviously, I'm going to say it. Let's say it. These would have been coloured. There'd been a lot more defined detail. And why? Okay, ask me if we've got evidence for colour. No, I'm just going to say they must have been coloured. And why not? Why can't you colour them? You know, actually, they would have been coloured anyway. And you know why? These are set very close to the fires. So there would have been charcoal on them anyway. So that's my proof. Don't need to say any more. And look at this landscape has become flooded. Obviously, if you've got flat plateaus along this landscape, and you've at least some of that rich earth that's managed to be retained by these great boulders, right? You're able to keep civilization going there for a very long period of time. What you're seeing there is a lot more deeper water than the Danube was in the 1920s, 1930s, 1940s, and that type of thing, before the building of these great dams, these Iron Gate dams. However, there's the construction of the Iron Gate Dam. It was probably one of the most expensive projects Serbia and Romania have ever had to do. This is far more expensive than the HS2. This would have used the GDP resources of Romania and Yugoslavia, and see it as both communist countries. They could have drawn upon resources from Russia anyway. But you can start to see the great immensity of this type of a project. And again, back to the archaeology. So the archaeology wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for this project. And there's this great, you know, you can see that this this tablet associated with Trajan, this plaque, tablet plaque, this plaque, the plaque of Trajan, right? And there it is, cut into the rock. And you know what? I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, I thought this earlier on. I thought this reminds me of Lord of the Rings in the films, the Fellowship of the Ring, when they're going within that landscape, beautiful sort of valleys, and you've got all these carvings in the rock, and yeah, this is what this conjures up. But obviously, J.R.R. Tolkien would have known about any of that before, because this hadn't been discovered in the 1920s, 1930s. So you can see the site being excavated there. And what we're going to do now, I am very reminded that I have spoken for a whole hour without shutting my mouth. But you can get an idea that there are areas there that are a little bit more deeper than 2 meters, but some of it is 1.5 meters from the surface, others a little bit more deeper. As the archaeology speaks for itself, and all these little stones and all these halves and these heads sticking up and all this wonderful archaeology. So what we're going to do, we will have our break then, but what I am going to do is remind you, next week we're going to be looking at the reuse of stones in the Anglo-Saxon period. And let's just stop that and let's see if there are any questions. I'll go on, Margaret, because you're the only real woman with us tonight.
Oh, thank you.
Because Jessica's just a girl. She's only 15. Well, so Margaret, anything you would like to say?
Well, if I lived 9,000 years ago, I would want to live there. It looks like paradise. And
it is paradise. That's the point. It is paradise because people lived there for 2,000 years.
Yeah. I would imagine there'd be quite a lot of wild animals that they would be able to kind of corral along the ravines and trap them quite easily.
So but then again, they've got agriculture as well. You can choose to be a vegetarian or sleep on the chair like Peter's.
Yeah, it just looks idyllic, and they seem to have gone from a Mesolithic lifestyle very quickly to settling a lot faster than in other regions.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. And it must have been an equation, a model that they were able to do that.
Mm.
Where's David gone?
I'm signing off now, Carl.
Oh, you're signing off as well. David's just gone.
No.
Yeah.
Roger, anything you'd like to say, Rog?
No, it's very interesting, totally new stuff to me. I had any idea this stuff was there. I didn't like it. And very interesting what the 9,000 years ago, the population control type thing, and a great understanding of the planet, really, like the American Indians in North America. You know, they had to seem to understand much more about nature and things around us and worked with it and used it properly.
Mm.
We lost a lot, so we got to get that back in and relearn something here. Very interesting.
Yeah, exactly. So I think Roger, one of the points there that you may have you've got me thinking about. One of the reasons why people have more children is the fear that they're going to lose children, right?
Yeah. To help with the farming and originally.
No, it's not just that. If you look at the Victorian period, people had like they had the Victorian period, they had everything going around them, but people still had 15 children and 10 died, right?
Well,
you don't see that here. You don't see that fear.
Yeah.
And they again, Margaret, I don't know how many children you've had, right? How many?
Just 2. We've just replaced ourselves.
And us. Yeah.
But you're probably happy with that, and that was it.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. If you go back in time, these people must have sat down and thought, right, there's enough going for us. Things are okay. So we only need 2 children. That's fine. Or 3.
Yeah.
So I think that's an important point. Right. So you're off now, Roger, are you?
Yeah, thanks very much. See you tomorrow, perhaps. I'll get the money off.
Yeah, see you tomorrow. I'll be there, Roger, tomorrow. Yeah, that'd be great. Hopefully see you tomorrow at 1:30, Roger.
Yeah, £32 now, isn't it?
Yeah, Roger, send us £32 for the drugs, yeah.
Yeah, okay. That's good. See you all. Take
care, Rog. Make sure you send
Yeah.
us some money, otherwise let's get the lads over. See you, Rog.
Okay, right. Oh, yeah.
Make sure you get the bus. It's leaving in 2 minutes, Rog. Bye.
I know, yeah.
Bye.
See you, Rog. Right, Jessica. We've lost we've lost David. I don't know where he went. Right.
Dwindling.
Pete's fallen asleep. Right. Oh Christ, this is not good tonight. Andy's still awake. Just Andy, anything?
The birth control thing. I mean, you kind of touched on it. I'm assuming that the evidence for that is the just the numbers of them,
yes,
rather than anything else. I just wondered if there was any more evidence of that, because it's kind of a bit of a jump, isn't it? They might not have just not liked each other.
Very random.
Yeah.
No, it's I've never come across that before, but when you look at that, it's sort of it does actually make sense, because when you if you look at the Amazon people, they're moving every 7, 8 years or 6 years from one location to another, right? Have they got a sense of population control? Is there population control that they know that they're heading for disaster, so they move somewhere else, and they basically say, well, you can't have any children this year because we've got to build new houses, right? So I think we don't give our ancestors credit where it's due. They're incredibly more intelligent than we give them credit for. And to be honest with you, to be able to cultivate a field and to be able to plant crops is not as easy as we think. It's really not. So, okay, somebody's talking about Mothman. Mothman on my camera. Right, so Jessica, we'll have a shorter break tonight, actually, because David's back in. David's come back in. Oh my God, Dave. Oh, right, David's back in. Oh, that's good. Flipping heck, back of the net. I think what it was. Right, Jessica, anything you'd like to say?
No, very interesting, beautiful carvings, and I do agree that they would have been coloured.
Even by accident.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, if you would be touching these things, right, because some of them are quite smooth and worn, right? So the grease on your hands would cause bacteria to build anyway. They would have colour on them anyway. There's just no way of avoiding that.
And even if you leave things like that outside, you have, I've left something outside and it's gone a little bit greeny from the outside. It's just leaving things outside and they just change from depending on what's around them, really. I don't know why it's gone green. I think it's probably moss. It's like a stone thing outside.
Yeah, well, you did that that's why Josh has gone green, because he's not allowed in the house. Right, okay. On that note, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back soon. He's a cheeky one, that David, right? He goes off before we ask him any questions, right? And oh God. Anyway, we'll see you in a minute, guys.
Okie dokie.
Okie dokie do 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 do.
Are you okay? Oh, where are you? Oh, right. I thought you must have gone out. Pardon? What did you say?
So I was thinking I might go out for a quick walk actually.
Okay.
Because you've got your second half. Yeah.
Yeah. So you both going to be here to eat tomorrow?
Come on, us. Come on, us. Come on. Come on. Guess what? You get to go out again. You get to go out with your brother.
Yeah.
Lads about town, lads.
You could go down to the Albion another time.
What, me, bro?
Yeah, you could.
Definitely.
Yeah.
We go down the Albion and have a pint.
You could be that man and his dog perched on a bar stool, couldn't you? The one that you always wanted your dad to be.
I didn't always want him to be that. I did used to say to him that it's a shame, you know.
You would have liked that kind of, you know.
Being the character.
Well, yeah.
But yeah,
Chatting to everybody.
well, that's what I used to say to him. I used to say you don't have to drink alcohol. And I think he always used to think that people that, you know, that you had to drink alcohol. And I was like, you can just go and have a coffee, guys. You know, I think he had this vision of pubs being like swashbuckling, you know, from like, yeah, drunken like pirates and stuff like that, or arr! I don't know. I think he did always sort of spring to mind. No, but I think he did. I don't know. I think it, but it was when I said to him like that, you know, when he first sort of got ill, and I was like, you know, Dan, I think a day that's okay, you could always just go and, you know, take a book, take a paper, and just be, yeah, sit in the book, meet
That bloke in the
yeah,
book.
meet a few people that you're not expected to. And he was like, oh,
No, I think.
he was like, no, I'm not a drinker. And I was like, you know,
No, he didn't like the smoking either.
it's the band that years before.
Okay.
Yeah, before.
It's not that long ago.
Yeah, it was 2000. It was 2006, 2007 that the band smoking inside pubs. So it wasn't that. It just, I think he just still had it down as it was drinkers. Right. No, well, go on, young man. Let's go for a quick one. Don't know if we'll do that, but we'll go for a one down there anyway.
Like a bloody miney, those two. You like seeing my turkeys, did you? And before you talk about stuffing, Pete, you were stuffed then. You must have fallen asleep for an hour.
I did, yeah.
Oh, God. Oh, it's still weird weather, Pete.
Aye.
Oh, I was on Lake Windermere last night, and 2 planes came over, the like of which I've never seen before. They were quite small, but they'd got quite long wings with propellers at each end. 2 of them came over Windermere and flew off. I've never seen anything like them.
Really big propellers.
With two propellers, one on each end of the wings.
They're called ospreys.
Oh.
Yeah, they have a vertical takeoff capability. They actually tilt the whole wing with the engines up to take off and then go.
Oh, amazing.
Really big propellers, very strange. One flew over tonight.
Are they flightless? No, not flightless. They're unmanned, are they?
No. They're big. They're actually quite big airplanes. They're troop carrying.
No,
actually a vertical takeoff transport.
No, these were not troop carrying. These were much, much smaller.
No, they're bigger than you think. It's the only ones that fly over that are like that. I've seen them. There are 2, one after another. Yeah.
From underneath, because we were right underneath them, they're kind of hourglass shape.
Yeah.
Underneath.
That'll be them. Yeah.
Yeah, not particularly noisy.
No.
Oh, well, I've never
they're a lot bigger than you think they are.
Oh. Oh, well, caused quite a spectacle.
Oh. Yeah, they do make a funny noise. Yeah, because they've got very, very big propellers.
Yes.
Oh, there's an amazing discovery just been made. I've just had it on my iPhone. I'm just going to try and track it down now. Something to do with fruit baskets. Come across that one?
No.
Anyway, keep talking about your planes. Oh, I've got it. Excellent. We've got to thank the Guardian for this one. I've got to put the milk in my tea and we'll get started. Anyway, David, what happened to you? You disappeared.
And he's muted.
Oh, it's even worse.
I don't know.
He's not even there.
Yes, he is.
Be away with the little people.
There he is.
Oh,
computer glitch.
Oh.
I'm sitting in a recliner chair and I made the mistake of putting my legs up.
Oh. It's funny, if I nod off on the settee in the afternoon, I could sleep forever. And yet at night, I can't sleep. I'm tossing and turning.
Yeah, exactly.
And how is it when you go to sleep during the day on the settee, you wake up and your face has got creases all over it?
Mm-hmm.
But at night, that doesn't seem to happen. Strange, very strange phenomenon.
Yeah, I don't know.
You answer me this, Margaret. Why is it you can fall asleep in the afternoon for as long as you want, right? And you go off straight away, right?
Yeah.
But when you want to go to sleep at night, you can't.
That's just what I said.
It's just
It's not really following the conversation, is he? No wonder he's struggling.
you.
There was, I think, a big accident on the 590 today.
There was.
Yeah, I travelled back along the Live Valley and we were stuck.
Yeah.
And it was completely closed off from Levens all the way.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Yeah, most of the afternoon, I'm afraid.
Yes.
No, I think that would be a fatality, I would think.
Oh dear. I wonder why they get so many on that road.
It's because there's people turning right and they're doing 70 miles an hour, you know, across them. It's a section of dual carriageway with several right turns.
That's, yeah.
Oh God, I can't stand them.
No.
Very
Dangerous.
We've got some really dangerous junctions being set up in Barry. Have you seen that one at Pete? You know the one by Morrison's? You go to Morrison's, you can turn right, and then suddenly the traffic's coming at speed when you're able to go right, and the light tells you to go right, but nobody stops. I don't. Yeah. And that really stresses me out. The thing is, when I was taught how to drive, a green light means you can go, not that traffic can plow into you.
Yeah, that sounds like it's set up wrong.
It is. Right, let's show you this. Yeah, it's Barry. It's bound to be set up wrong. Everything's set up wrong in Barry. Right, so let's show you this article. I've just it's just been thrown through to me now. I haven't really seen it, so I'm going to share it now. Let's have a little look at this. Where are we sharing the screen? It would help if I had it on the screen. Hang on a minute. Fruit baskets. Right. Yes, I'll have the cookies. Yeah, I'm happy. You know when I say, do you want these cookies? I never ever end up having any. Do you know what I mean? Right, here we go. I've not seen this yet. Fruit baskets from 300 years BC, found in ruins of Thonis Heraclean. Incredible discoveries at submerged ancient city off the coast of Egypt have remained untouched. Look at that, food baskets.
Wow.
A fragment of a basket brought to the surface. Wicker baskets filled with fruit that have survived from the 300 years BC, and hundreds of ancient ceramic artifacts and bronze treasures have been discovered in the submerged ruins of the near-legendary city of Thonis Heraclean off the coast of Egypt. Does that look like a wicker basket to you?
No.
No, that looks like pottery.
It does. It's even got prints in it, hasn't it? So
that's pottery.
Yeah.
Because sometimes they get the wrong images.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have been preserved as well, would it? Really?
Well, go on, Andy.
I was going to say, I hope they have found some. That would be really quite amazing. I'd love to see it.
So this is, I think what they've done, that's not a wicker basket. That's pottery, but
it does say ceramic artifacts.
Yeah, but I know it does, Pete. But you immediately think that image is going to be a wicker basket because the headlines do say fruit baskets. So, but then again, that looks pretty well preserved. But it would be good to think that there's fruit in them. If we go down here, here we go. This is it. They were still filled with doum, the fruit of an African palm tree that was sacred for the ancient Egyptians, as well as grape seeds. So there we go, showing where the site is, Thonis Heraclean. Nothing was disturbed. It was very striking to see baskets of fruit. So there you go, baskets of fruit. And they're saying it is within an area where the archaeologists have discovered a sizable tumulus about 60 meters long by 8 meters wide, and sumptuous Greek funerary offerings. So yeah, so this is what they're saying. We probably need to look at this a little bit more, and there's evidence of extensive burning. Probably worth waiting a few days and actually trying to see if there's any images of these actual baskets.
Yeah.
So that's a heads up anyway. It said that was in The Guardian yesterday, actually. It's just come up on my phone now. Right. Let's crack on. So I've got to get back into the flow of it. New share. Right, we're back to our site. So I think what we actually did a big chunk of the lecture before the break.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, I'm going to put my headphones on as well. There we go. And somebody was talking about a ghost or something on my camera earlier on. It was a huge moth, which we do get here. So we're back to the archaeological site, trying to get back into the flow, as I said. And and I think the point being made with this image quite clearly is that you've got this big backdrop, and you've got this very narrow corridor of civilization. And I think this is the point. Again, this is the Danube today. It does look beautiful, and you can imagine that there's only going to be small corridors of land on either side of the Danube, and the ones with our site that we're looking at today have happily been preserved. And again, more of these little carvings. So I think what I'm going to do is just get back to my notes a little bit and see what else we can actually bring from all this. So, okay, let me try and get back to where we were. Hang on a minute. So we've got the indigenous culture. Yes. So what we are seeing is that the development of the settlement was strongly dictated, influenced by the typology of the surrounding area. That should read typography. Oh God, they've made a classic mistake there. It's sat on a narrowly promontory on the bank of the river, as we've been saying, and in many ways it's protected. It's protected from behind, but from whom? This is the point, because you've got a range behind these people alongside the river itself, and you've got access to all your raw materials, all your food, all your living space has to be available. And again, back to that little conversation we had before the break, was in regards to sustainability. And we've got a lot to learn from what we're seeing. And the one thing about the Lepenski Vir site, the early Lepenski Vir site, from the earliest buildings that we're seeing, is that there was probably a population of around 100 odd people, about 4 or 5 main families with all the buildings associated with them. As if we look at the illustration, obviously back to these little carvings, these buildings here. So, and again, what is very interesting, if we slant our eyes away from my notes, and I want to sort of annotate this a little bit better, is that what you do find is you've got these really nice beaten clay floors, and the surrounding landscape, the surrounding underlying geology is this sandy sort of loamy underneath. It's almost as if these buildings have been sort of tucked on top. And obviously we're looking at the rising levels of the Danube there as well, and we're looking at the stratigraphic layers. You can see there that as the archaeology was cut down, no more than about 2 meters across most of the site. So again, what I'm going to do is just go back to my little bits of notes and sort of try and keep that in mind. So we've got about 100 people in the early stages, and the primary food source of the inhabitants initially would have been fishing, but as new people moved in, they were able to cope with a few more people, as we're saying. Were able to cope with the sort of new agriculture coming over from the Middle East, and being influenced by the likes of people from Jericho. Was there a problem with overpopulation? Was there something that caused after 2,000 years for things to change? We don't know. But the main thing is this is a sense of permanent settlement, where they're able to bring in their food, and they're able to use that sense of specialism within the landscape.
Carl?
Yeah, go on.
Sorry, when did these new people come in from Asia Minor?
Now, my notes are not being really clear on that, but
right.
if we want to if we want to go in with a date range, this is really important. So I'm pleased that I managed to just say, right, we're not going to go back as far as 11,500 years ago. We're going to focus on 9,500 years ago, because that makes it less complicated. So somewhere in the process of between 9,000 years ago and 8,000 years ago, there was this major change. And then 8,000 years ago, this is when we start to see this major change. So around 8,000 years ago, we see this major change where we get these people moving in. So about 1,000 years, you could I'm gonna say that what I'm reading on the screen is that somewhere around 8,000 years ago, things changed. So it was an eruption from these 100 people. It was almost as if there was enough of a landscape. There was enough Lebensraum for people to expand to. It's the German word Lebensraum for expansion. It was enough. It was the ability to expand. So, and interesting enough, that period of around 8,000 years ago nicely stems in with the developments going on in the Middle East as well. So it fits in, but what is fitting is the adjustment of change. They're able to do it. Yeah.
It connected with the big tsunami 8,000 years ago that happened off Norway when we.
Forget about that.
There's nothing to do with that.
Forget about that.
Okay.
Just stop overcomplicating. Andy's question was sensible. Forget about that one.
Thank you.
Get on it. Stop out of my life. So basically, we moved from a Mesolithic society to a Neolithic society, and this is when things actually start to change. When the village itself has got this sort of social economic development. When you've got this sort of the Mesolithic Neolithic boundary is when these people move in to make it Neolithic. That's the moment that things change. I think probably that identifies it a bit better, but Andy, that you've got a Mesolithic society initially with a settlement of around 100 people, with around 5 families, and then in the later period, people start to move into the society. It becomes a Neolithic society. Things start to change. Things start to get a little bit more complex. Now, the archaeologists in my notes are mentioning that there must have been something keeping the people together, right? And what that was, we don't really know. Now, my notes are basically saying it could have been something to do with religion. But if it was something to do with religion and that people from outside come into it, then that would conflict with your religious beliefs. So whatever the binding force was for the community and a means of coordination for activity and its members must have started to develop with these stone carvings and these stone heads. So these stone heads and these carvings become very important within this new infrastructure, within a new sense of place within the landscape. So within a new way of life, replace the old social structure with the evolution of the Neolithic. But again, the mechanisms that the Neolithic brings in, almost the people accept. They say that's fine, we'll go along with that. It's almost as if our society's okay, we've got enough room. As I mentioned earlier on, with the Windrush situation, it's always been that we invited people in from the Caribbean because they would have been welcome, and in many parts of society they were, and they played an active role. And this is what we can actually see with this. So they're now saying, right, within a larger landscape, there might be 25 of these type sites. This may have been a central site, not just 10 sites. There may have been up to 25 separate localities where there were villages like this. There may have been many more, but those many more sites may have been eroded away into the sea. Now, one question is, before anyone actually asks it, how do we know that people were living there for about 2,000 years, right? So based on an amount of anthropological changes in the skeletons of everything, what we do see is that people are living within this landscape for 2,000 years, which is a total, wait for it, of 120 generations. People were living within this landscape continuously, controlling their sense of population, controlling their sense of intercourse with the landscape for 120 generations. Now, what does that mean? Well, I've got a little box by there that traces my family back about 5 generations, right? This is 120 generations. It's a very, very long time. So again, we're trying to put everything into the date range of what we're looking at. Things start to change beyond 6,000 years ago if everything ties in with the dates. A few interesting things: the layout of the houses, which are on an inclined promontory that opens to the river, is terrace-like and spreads in a fan-shaped arrangement. So in other words, allowing access to the river by people from houses further from the bank. So in other words, the entranceway faces the river. So if you need to bring anything into the house from the river, you bring it from the house into the river. Stand again. From the river into the house, right? So instead of facing the doorway facing the hillside, which would be no good, it's important to remember that the doorways actually face the river. So if we have a little look at that, you can see as these, if we draw in on this as well, we can understand these a bit better. So we've got these buildings, triangular-like buildings. There we go. And if you're seeing the entranceway, if you want to draw that one in as well, as this starts to develop with the new people, the entranceway naturally faces the river. So anything that you can bring in from the river goes directly into the house. Now this is really important. Another important point is that because of the positioning of the moraines and the boulders along the Danube, it meant that the Danube didn't erode this site. So the site was preserved when the archaeologists excavated it. If these boulders hadn't been there, the Danube would have moved this, it would have moved around, and this would have been destroyed forever. So that's a really, really important point. So as we start to move on again, I'll change this image a little bit. Again, the archaeologists excavating there. And again, the Danube is just there. So if they hadn't have excavated this when they did, this site would not be known about. It would have just been flooded out. It would have just disappeared. The archaeology would have remained there, but nobody would have known this for maybe 100 years until the dam is no longer used. It's likely that things will change. We're not, but I can't say any more than that because I'm not a time traveler. So the history of the architecture of the houses still provides no definite answer as to periods, right? So it's really difficult to work out if all the buildings existed at one time or there were major changes. It's sort of there's something interesting here, right? The point is that the buildings were constructed as they were originally built. Hello, Michelle. And what I mean by that, they were built like tent-like structures without any stone on the ground. And then people moving in, they said, why don't you use stones? Why didn't you have a stone hearth? And they said, all right, we'll keep the tent-like structures, but we'll start to add in the stone architecture. So this is what my notes are telling me. It may have been that the people utilized the original sites over a very long period of time because there's no differentiation between time periods of, it may have been that the people actually just used these buildings for such a long period of time. We don't know. Because it worked, they didn't need to change anything. So the floors used a local limestone clay, which when mixed with animal dung and ash hardens like concrete. That's why they're still there after such a long time. As a result, the floors are in almost perfect condition. On the edges of the floors, there are remnants of stones, as we've already mentioned, reinforcing the timber roofing arrangement. The roofing material was some easily degradable material, or was similar to what's around them. So what we're talking about, so you've got the timbers, and then what we do find is that they must have used a mixture of clays and muds to actually create a surface for the roof. In other evidence tells that they may have actually used reeds. We can never know what these buildings look like, so the reconstructions, we're really unsure. It may have been, as I say, a composite mixture on the roof of timber, clay. It may have been a wattled roof. Lots of that evidence hasn't survived, so lots of it is guesswork. But we're hoping that we can be approximately right. There's so much information in front of me that I'm reading that I can't do it all today. But so let's look at a few more images. So you can see that you've got these buildings and they're looking out to the sea, as they've always looked out to the sea, but the site has been moved. That's all we're talking about. So we can actually see it today. And this is like that cement-like floor with the stones. And these would have kept the roofing structure up. So the substructure, and you've got the superstructure above, and you've got these stones as well, arranged by the fires all over the place. So they're very important. So again, what worked, and every generation must have changed the timbers. They just like brought new timbers in and just refurbished it. It was fine. It worked. Why change something that's not broken? It's like we've got terrace houses in Wales that were constructed in the 1890s, and they're still being lived in today after 130 years. The people who originally built them didn't think they'd be still lived in after 130 years, but they are. And the basic frames of these buildings are the same. This is what we're talking about with this. The basic frames of these buildings are the same. There's a much more clearer picture from the 1960s. You can see what's working there. And again, back to what I said earlier on, this clay, this dung, this concrete-like floor stands up well preserved against the underlying muds, the clays, and the soils. And you can get an idea of the scale of these buildings as these people look at these buildings. And you can see all the little stone statues, like little miniature statues from Easter Island. It's so wonderful looking at that. So with the interiors of the buildings, we got the fireplaces. Were built from massive rectangular stone blocks. The fireplaces are further extended with stone blocks to create a kind of shrine. So behind the fireplaces, you can see you've got these little shrine with these shrines were always decorated with sculptures carved from massive round river stones. Now that's really important. They use river stones. So where the rectangular blocks may have come from anywhere, probably glacial, they would have been rounded, but lots of these look like they could have been quarried. Not really sure on that. But these stones themselves are actually river stones. They come from the river. They've got a connection with the river. Do these represent ancestors or river gods? Another significant feature of the houses is a shallow circular depression in the ground located precisely in the middle of the floor. This may represent some type of altar. So if we look at that plan and we sort of look back on it, let's just sort of look there. So what we can see, I think this, yeah, it's I don't know where that's coming in, because surely that's the hearth, isn't it? They're talking about another depression which is sort of absent in this picture. But there we go. Here's some more of these heads. Oh, Pete, that does look a bit like you, surely.
He's not very happy.
Oh, Pete, John's joining us next week. That'll really make you unhappy. So, what we can say about these buildings, if we sort of do an overview, so we've got sculptures, we've got fireplaces, we've got altars. You could say that the stones, the higher stones in the rooms represented tables. You've got a hardened floor level. most of the houses are almost the same basic layout. So they're the same basic layout. Some people actually think that the buildings that represent human figures. I don't know if that comes into it, but you could probably work that one out. Obviously, the fireplace is massively important. How everything worked, we don't really know. And there's some other weird things that I'm looking in front of me, but we'll leave that for another day. So another archaeologist argues that the house is representing human figures, and a female archaeologist known as Babovic says that she believes that the figures, not only of the carvings inside, the figures might actually represent the figures of a goddess, and the central zone. Yeah. Anyway, I can't see that myself. But anyway, the controversies over this site really. The controversies over the site are that, you know, people there may have been much more in regards to the archaeology. And some of the archaeology may have actually been lost in the 1960s. The concepts that this is an architecturally modern settlement, a modern looking settlement, and it's completely alien to the rest of the landscape. This site is very interesting. All these different sites within this landscape are interesting, and if they embody the sense of early civilization in Europe, then so be it. So again, what I'm going to do, we're going to have a little look at some of these last images, and then we'll call it a day. We'll try to interpret some of these images. There's so much more we could have done tonight, but let's have a look at some of these images. Again, that's one that looks like Andy. It does. And look at this one. That must be a later carving, a much later carving, but that is absolutely spectacular with the beard there. But have you noticed that that if you look at these, that looks miserable. Definitely looks miserable, right? And even this guy with the beard, with the massive eyes and the huge nose, and even he looks miserable. So again, we're looking into these buildings. We've got, I think that's what they were describing, somewhat of a little bit of a shrine at the back there. We've got the hearth, and we've got the entranceway, and we've got these stones just before they sort of change the site. And again, both of these figures look extremely miserable. But again, it's great. One thing I like about this site is they actually use the original when they're actually showing off the site. Again, they are river pebbles. They must, if you think about this, right? If that there is the same as this, what's caused the erosion? When that is buried in the ground, and this is buried in the ground nearby, the erosion must be caused by handling over a long period of time. Remember, it is sandstone.
It's probably been rolling around.
On the site, or different ways of thinking about it. Mm-hmm. Now, look at this reconstruction, right? As you know what I said about the reconstructions, if we go back, we'll go all the way back, way all the way back to the beginning. I think, there, right? That looks very different than that. So if we go all the way back through, I think there's one interesting thing that these reconstructions are showing us is that nobody's calling this, right? So the reconstruction there is, as said, described roof. But if you look back, it's almost as if the frontages can be removed. And the smoke is actually exiting out through the front of the building. And I gotta say something really obvious. Wouldn't this have been a very cold place to have lived in the winter with the cold jets of air coming off the water? would it have been very cold? Maybe another translation of this is in the summer months, these would have been open, but in the winter months, they close them off. So that's what would make these reconstructions a lot more valid. You see the boulders there, those are the types of boulders. And if you look in the water systems there, these boulders are actually stopping the rest of the site from eroding. And I've got to be honest with you, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking Native American. Yeah, that's what it's saying to me. But this is our wonderful site that we're looking at today. And again, so what we're saying, we're looking at this backdrop. We're looking at these carved figures in the fireplace. And there is another reconstruction. So you can see that we haven't got much land. We haven't got much agricultural land, but whatever land that they've got is well utilized. And look at that. Have you ever seen a body buried like this?
Yeah, good yoga position.
But actually, doesn't that represent the shape of the building?
It was thought at one time that with the feet and the hands together, like that, feet, the soles touching, gave you strength to recover.
In the afterlife.
Well, they may have thought that by putting him like that, he may possibly recover.
And the other thing, yes, but there is one other thing about life about this, Pete, right? Is it's almost as if everything, I can see where that archaeologist was saying that these may represent the human body, and these may actually represent people, because in death, the buildings do almost represent what that person looks like.
Yeah, he has got a slight hole in his head as well, hasn't he?
Oh, no, let's not go down trepanning as well. But it's quite possible. It's really quite possible. Yeah. I loved what Pete just said then. It just like that sense of recovery. Yeah. I like that, Pete. I like that.
And by the river, a reed thatch is quite weatherproof, because reeds have been used for thatching throughout.
Yeah, exactly. And why not? There was that idea that they may have actually used clay and reed on the roof as well, but then again, that may have made it a bit more heavier.
I remember a chap who mixed animal dung with cement in the fireplace to prevent soot buildup.
Did it work?
It appeared to work.
Oh wow! Oh wow! On that note, Pete, that's actually the last slide. So yes, I've gone. There's so much more I could have told you tonight, but it is 9:44. So I'm going to stop now. But that is an introduction to. I'm going to ask you all the big question, right? Which is going to be, which I need to ask Andy, Pete, David, Margaret, Jessica. Did you ever come across this site before at all? Anything?
No,
never heard of it.
No, never.
No, nor did I. And I think the biggest thing is that sense of integration.
Yeah.
I wonder if you could see it if you had a cruise down the Danube.
Yeah, you would be able to see it.
No, you can't because of the dams.
No, you can't.
That level. So.
Yeah, no, that's right. Yeah, no, that's a good point. But you could have.
I'm sure you can dock near the first dam and get somewhere near it by coach because it's not that much further up.
No, exactly.
Those little heads are quite amusing, aren't they? They're quite funny. You just wondered, was it the same person that did them all? Did it have a sense
as a gift for everybody? Yeah.
And I think in youth. And he said, "You've got to keep this forever." What? 120 generations? You've got to be having a laugh. Yeah, but he was a very important person. Yeah, you're right. I've had to put up with this for 120 bloody generations.
And unless you're nice to me, I'll make you look miserable.
And the other thing as well is, right, that's probably what caused the collapse of the civilization, and they went elsewhere because they were sick of looking at these figures.
Yeah, I think it's astonishing that, I mean, we've had 3 or 4 lectures this year on completely new civilizations, and not in hidden parts of the world in deepest jungle, right under our noses.
Yeah,
yes,
that's quite amazing.
It is
Right,
massively
Andy, yeah.
amazing. It is massively amazing. And the other thing as well is, right, Anne would have loved this lecture tonight. I know she would have. I don't know where she is. Michelle phoned me this morning, right? She said, have you ever heard of a gorse mill? And I said, you what? A gorse mill. Apparently in the 1800s, they established gorse fields across Britain. And they established gorse mills, right?
Never heard
And
of it.
I said, hang on a minute. Yeah, exactly. You can say it again because I'd never heard of it. And she said, I said, what do you mean? Gorse mills? Yeah, like we've got the land that's ours in West Wales. We've got there's about 1/3 of an acre completely covered in gorse, right? And basically gorse milling, right, was essential to the cavalry at Waterloo, to the cavalry in the Boer War. Apparently, it was actually used as fodder. It was ground down, the spikes and all, right, and it was used as fodder.
Wow, I never knew that.
I know gorse is used for fires. People burned it in their fires. Yeah, it does burn really well.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's used as fodder. Yeah, Michelle said she looked this up, and I just thought, what?
Well,
and
holly was quite popular as well because it stayed fresh for quite a long time.
Quite sturdy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Can you? I didn't think you could eat holly, could you?
Yeah, no, humans can't, but cattle do. So that's why you get a lot of Hollins lanes and things like that, because they were all holly on the edge of the fields for the cows and things and stock to eat, which I never knew before.
Well, I never knew that before.
Yeah.
Well, blooming hell, it's a night of firsts, isn't it?
But I didn't know until we discovered that flax retting thing. I didn't realize just how big the flax industry was for a period, and that every farm had to grow some flax.
Massive
by law. Yeah.
And the use of the linseed oil. Yeah.
Exactly. Jessica's just said my laptop is glitching, so if I leave, it's because I had to turn it off. Ring me if needed after, and could you please be an angel and send me the links? Thank you. Keep being amazing, creep. Right, Jessica. Anything you want to say, Jess?
No, brilliant lecture. Thank you, Carl.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. So what we'll do, right, David, as soon as David speaks now, he disappears. So let David say something. So David.
That's fine, thank you.
Right, David, thank you very much. Who else have we got? Margaret, have you still got to say anything? He's gone.
Yeah.
David, I didn't even say goodbye, you bastard.
You told him to.
Yes.
I didn't. So that no, don't you? No. No, that's not fair. No. Right, Margaret.
No, it was very good, thank you.
I told him to go, you liar.
You gave him permission.
Right, that's why I gave him permission. What about you, Pete?
No, it was good. I enjoyed it. Yeah.
And I scored 3 goals against the Celts, and he didn't even get them because he was asleep. Right, okay. Right, on that note, that was brilliant. I'm gonna call it a day. And no, I tell you what you should do, right, is you should give me a country that we've never done, and we'll find the civilization from there. That's your job. No, and you look it up, won't you?
Albania.
Oh, we don't want to go there.
No, it'll be too similar to the Greeks and the ones we've just done.
No, it's too close. It's only there.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
And it's small, but it's backward.
Would Finland be interesting, do you think?
But the Albanians are all over here doing car wash.
Yeah.
Can we just stop this? Wait, somebody's getting... Oh.
They get bad press, the Albanians. You go anywhere in sort of Northern Europe and they blame all crime on Albanians.
Yeah, they do.
They make good nightclub bouncers.
Yeah,
they do. And actually, I'm not saying which, but there's a political party that I know of, and they always say, what we'll do, we'll get the Hungarians to email everybody for us. And I'm thinking, God,
we were anchored off Venice.
Oh, no. Oh, go on, Pete. Tell us this story again. Go on.
Have I told you before? Have I?
No, go on. No,
I'm not
you
heard it.
There was
started
a
now.
rowing boat coming down from the horizon, coming towards us gradually. Took him about 2 hours. When he got near to us, there was 4 people in this rowing boat, and they were trying to get from Albania to Italy, to Venice.
Wow.
And we took them on board, put them in the ship's hospital to sleep. They stepped in there, we fed them, and then we dropped them off in Venice. And they applied for political asylum.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you couldn't get anywhere near Albania in those days, could you? I remember seeing it from northern Corfu, and they had big kind of machine gun nests and searchlights in towers all along the coast.
Yeah.
And they said if you went any nearer, they would shoot at you.
Ooh.
It's changed now, though.
Well, it has, yeah. They make sure that they aim properly.
Yeah.
It took me a while to get that up.
You can go there now, which I'm sure it's, it's no reason why it shouldn't be a lovely, interesting place like all the other parts of that world,
The thing is, Peter tells that story to every Albanian he sees, and he always gets his car washed free.
Absolutely.
Oh, I did. I did tell them that. That's right. Yes, I told the car wash people how we'd saved the Albanians, and they knocked a tenner off my car valeting.
Excellent.
But
I'll have to remember that one.
Yeah, but the problem is the Pete did this. He said, "Oh, you want the £20 one?" And Pete said, "Yeah, the car valeting inside's 10, right? And a car washing outside's 10." So the guy said, "Oh, lock £10 off." And then Pete said, "Oh, I don't want the outside wash," so he had it done free.
Yeah.
No.
Right, on that note, we'll call it a night.
I'll call it a day. Just give us the tenner and go. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's the other way around, isn't it?
Yeah.
All right then. Well, if there's no other questions, Pete, Andy, Margaret, and Jessica, it's been a delight tonight. We will see you next week with something a lot more easier. Reuse of Anglo-Saxon masonry, but there's lots of it. I got something. Oh, there's something walking on the screen again.
Mothman again. Yeah.
Mothman. If there's nothing else, thank you very much tonight, and I will Andy, Pete, Jessica, and Margaret again. I'll see you next week.
All right, thanks, Carl.
It's not really good grammar. A lot more easier, is it?
What's that?
Not good grammar.
What do you mean?
A lot more easier.
Yeah.
A lot.
Got lost in the
A lot
translation.
easier, not a lot more easier.
Why can't I can say a lot more easier? It's Freedom Day in 4 days.
People will point and say,
Shut up. Shut up. It's a lot easier then.
Absolutely.
That's better.
Tart. No, I'm not calling you a tart. I'm calling Peter Tart, please.
It's too late now.
It's more easier a lot.
Great Numbridge.
Oh, she's gone now. I've upset her. Anyway, take care. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye, Andy. Bye, Carl.
Bye. Bye. Night. Night. It's Mothman. Is it? Oh, right. Everyone's gone. Night. Yeah, night. And we sing and we march. Anyway, thank you very much for everybody on YouTube. The last one watching. Yes, it was a real turkey. So thank you very much. If you ever want to join us online, then you're very, very welcome. So we do this every week, every Tuesday, religiously. We don't always put it online, but if you actually want to take part in the actual classes, then you can do so. So here we go. Weebly.com. Thank you very much. Goodbye. Stop recording. Oh.